Good evening, everyone. Warm greetings. My name is Anita, and I welcome everyone on behalf of Manhattan Meditation Center. So, before we start today's talk, a few announcements again that these talks are available on Manhattan Center's YouTube channel and Facebook page. If you want to access this talk or any previous ones, please visit either of the websites or URLs to access them. This series is called Wisdom in Action. And on our YouTube channel, we have created a playlist which is named Wisdom in Action, and talks are available, underneath that. Besides this, Manhattan Center offers live meditation twice a day, Power Boost meditation at 12 p.m. in the afternoon from Monday to Friday, and Good Night meditation from Monday to Saturday at 8 p.m. and at 7:30 p.m. on Sundays. Meditations are only for 15 to 20 minutes, and meditators generally share some thoughts on a particular topic and then lead into meditation. The reason for that is that meditation is not just an activity where you sit down and try to concentrate or focus your mind or take it to blank, no thoughts. Meditation is also a state of mind where you think, keep your mind clean and clear and think clearly, right? So all these different aspects which are shared by meditators, it is our intention that it leads to unclutter the mind. And it keeps it slowly, as you keep practicing and keep implementing it, it'll keep your mind free, peaceful, and lead to happiness even. Mm-hmm. Today's topic ties up with this. It's critical not to be critical. I think it's kind of a norm nowadays in a society that we give criticism on others, on situations, even on self. And the intention is that we want to make it better, or we want to reach perfection, which is overrated, but that's a topic for some other time. But what often happens unintentionally is that criticism goes a little bit over the top and it turns toxic. Toxic criticism is very similar, like toxic getting mixed in the water streams. And we only come to realize it when it starts impacting the health of the people through drinking water or through crops, and it surfaces as illnesses. And then the whole thing just blows up on our face, and then we try to take some measure. Something very similar happens in the mind also. When criticism turns toxic, mind is just goes down, down the hill. And we just, whenever there is a situation like COVID, where it pushes people over the top, people go into depression, anxiety, fear, demotivation, insomnia, you name it, the list goes on. And meditation does help. But can we just, and before we go there, the self-criticism is even worse than getting criticism from others. When you get a criticism from others, there are at least two perspectives, and it might take time to seep in a negative perspective because you might be able to counter it for some time. But when you are your own critic, that's worse. You just take it in, and you don't realize. And I am one of the examples for that, I am my worst critic. And I always thought it's a noble gesture. Before anyone points my mistake, I should figure it out myself and fix it. Didn't realize that it's chipping away my confidence slowly, one bit at a time. And when I had to face a situation like a COVID in my personal life, I just went down. And that's what led me to Brahma Kumaris. And I pulled myself out. Thank God for that. But the thing is, do we really need to reach to that point where we are hurting so much, whether ourselves or others? Is there a better way to live life where we actually don't go so toxic? So I'm going to invite today's speaker, Sister Judy Rogers. Most of you are familiar with Sister Judy. I lovingly call her Sister Judy. She's a media consultant. She also has taught at Ohio University. As a media consultant, she worked for a lot of big corporations. But besides that, she has been a meditator and a student of spiritual studies for a very, very long time. If I'm not mistaken, 25 plus years. So I'm going to invite Sister Judy so we can hear her thoughts, how we can be not so critical that we turn toxic. Welcome, Sister Judy.
Thank you, Anita. All right, we have 1 hour to change this habit, right?
Yep.
No problem. All right, I just want to say to start with that I always see this as a conversation, not a lecture on my part. And so I'm happy to be interrupted throughout, and Anita can help me watch the chat. And I don't claim that I'm an expert in not being critical, but I've sat around and thought about it a lot because I knew I was going to sit with you. So why don't we explore this terrain together? I guess let's start right where you left off, Anita. No matter which side of criticism you're on, it feels bad, right? If you are the critic, what has to happen inside of you in order to have the criticism? I mean, just think for a minute. What has to happen in your mind in order for you to formulate a critical thought? So you have to have a critical mind. The mind has to be holding this negative assessment, whether it's of the self or it's of someone else. So the critic themselves, before the criticism ever leaves their mouth, or sometimes you can, the critic, sometimes if someone knows us well, they can criticize us without opening their mouth, right? Our mother, for example, she might be able to criticize us before she even says anything, or someone who knows us well. So we have to be aware that I, the critic, in the very act of having that critical thought, I have already done some damage to the mind. I've already put the mind in a deficit place, in a negative place. The other thing that happens with criticism, another thing that goes on is a kind of entanglement. So and I'm talking here about subtle entanglement. So if I look at someone and I look at them with a deficit vision, and I open my mouth and I say something to them that is critical, I just created a little karmic loop between us. I've just created a little subtle strand where I am now locked in on this trait of yours that I see as negative and I'm sharing with you. And what happens to you when you get my criticism? You pull away, right? I mean, instantly, when you're criticized, you don't embrace someone who's there criticizing you. You start withdrawing, right? You back up. Say, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. So So there's the atmosphere that gets created in the mind. There's the negative entanglement between us, and there is, I've just then given sorrow to someone and they're now backing away. So it's just not the posture we want to be in. Now, why do we do it? I think there's different reasons that we criticize. One is that we're annoyed, right? We look at someone and whatever they're doing, we find it really annoying. Why are they doing that? And we feel compelled to let them know that we're a little bit annoyed with them, or maybe a lot annoyed with them. But sometimes we actually criticize out of what you might say would be a good place. In other words, I love this person and therefore I want them to be better, right? I want them to see that they could be so much more. And so I criticize them from a place that I think might actually be beneficial. But the same thing I just said about criticism holds true whether your motive is good or not. Because what you've done is you're now kind of in yoga with this negative aspect to them. The part of them you want to change, you're now focused on that. And there's a saying, whatever we think about, whatever we look at, whatever we talk about, we get more of that. So if I've just zeroed in on something in you that I find annoying or that I want you to change, I'm actually amplifying that thing. I didn't mean to, that wasn't my intention, but somehow I actually have just given it more energy. I've now amplified the very thing that I wanted to go away. So this tendency to be critical is, I think of it as an acquired habit. And it comes from a bit of weakness. I mean, if you think about the great souls you know, and even if you don't know them personally, think about Mahatma Gandhi, think about Nelson Mandela. There's a great book on Nelson Mandela that explains how he managed to go from prisoner to president. And it had a lot to do with appreciative vision. You know, his ability he got things done, but he didn't get them done through criticism. You know, he had this way, this other alternative. And so that's what I thought we might talk about. What's the option? What's the option? If you're not going to adopt this critical stance with all of its negative repercussions, what stance do you want to be in? If I were to ask you what's the opposite of criticism, what would you say? You can type in the chat. You can unmute. What would you say? Opposite of criticism would be
acceptance.
Acceptance, yep.
Appreciation.
Appreciation, yes. I would say those two, and I'm going to add one to that. I'd say tolerance also. But I would add, go ahead.
People have typed praise, love, compliments.
Compliments, yes. I think all of that. And I want to add to that generosity. Now I'm talking here about a state of spirit, generosity of spirit, big heart, generous mind, and big heart. So when I have a generous mind and a generous heart, and I look at someone who's doing something that I don't think so good, instead of criticizing them, what I would innately do is I would become a bit of a donor. If you're a parent, think of it like you're watching your kid trying to do something, and instead of saying, "You dummy," like a 2-year-old learns to walk, or 1-year-old, 14 months, whatever they are, they get up, they're really poor at it, right? They're swinging around, they're losing their balance. We don't say, "You idiot." That's not how it's done. What do we say? Good, good. You've got the idea. You're almost there. Yep, yep. Your balance is a little off, but yep, here you go. Come to me. Right. Look at you. And we encourage them, right? We say, nice job. You didn't make it all the way, but you made it most of the way. And next time you'll be right here. That's what we naturally do when we love them. So that generous stance, and I'm using parenting because that's, even if you just fell into it, you find when you're a parent, you tend to have that generous heart. You're really trying to make it work. So that nature, that generous nature, will give you an alternative to criticism, because it includes many of the things that you mentioned. It includes contentment. It includes appreciation. It includes tolerance. It includes acceptance. So this state of generosity where you're actually responding from overflow gives you these options that you may not have realized you had. But when you reset into this generous state, you find yourself with these different ways of responding. One that we talk about a lot is good wishes, also known as bhavana. So when someone is failing at something, when they're doing poorly, you're watching someone do something and it's hard to watch. They're doing it so badly and you think, gosh, and your tendency is either to say, okay, look, you're doing this wrong, right? You really aren't coming at this the right way. Let me tell you how this should be done. All right, now what's just happened, right? Your mind went negative. You've now created this tangle and they're shrinking. So that wasn't the method. But if you come at it as the donor, you look at them and you say, okay, good. Yeah, you're getting the hang of this. I see what you're trying to do here. And if you add a little bit of this to it, if you add a little bit of patience to this, or you add a little bit of balance to this, or you add a little bit of kindness to this, or whatever, depending on what they're doing, the next time you do that customer interaction, just pause a moment and look at the person and say such and such, and then whatever, right? So you're more in a donor consciousness than the critic. And it flows, because it's a generous state, it naturally flows from you. Now, I guess one thing we'd have to say is, well, how do we get there? Right? How do I get, when I'm feeling annoyed or I'm feeling like this one I want to do so well isn't doing well, and my instinct is criticism, what do I do? How do I reset? And I think there's some simple tricks. One of the simplest tricks that probably all of you use is gratitude, right? Do any of you have this as a default? Take yourself to the gratitude state of mind, and suddenly what it does is it pulls in the awareness of how much you have. Right, whether it's how much patience you have, how much kindness you have, how many friends you have, how much opportunity you have, etc. And that state of mind then brings in these options of generosity. The other one is appreciation, which is very close to gratitude. So you certainly can, those would be, in the moment, if you don't have time to go off and tell everybody, wait a minute, I need to go have my meditation. I'll be back in 20 minutes. If you don't have that option, then you can invoke one of these states that will bring you to generosity, like gratitude. But why do we have our meditation practice? I mean, I am assuming that every person on this Zoom call tonight, or YouTube or wherever, has a spiritual practice. I mean, that's why you're here, right? Otherwise, you'd be watching television or shopping online or something else. You're here because you are committed to making these shifts inside. And this is fundamental to your meditation practice, this business of being able to shift from the critic into one with this generous heart, into a donor, into a bestower. So we've talked before about the fact that the times we're in are the hard times, right? They're hard times for almost everybody. And our habit, our personal habit, and our cultural habit for most of us is extroversion. And in fact, we've been rewarded for extroversion. It's considered a good thing when you're growing up. If you're a quiet kid, they always say, well, she's a little bit quiet. Maybe you could get her to socialize more. But extroversion in its nature takes us to the place where we are fixated on what's going on in the world. And there's so many things going on in the world, right? We could be fixated on the news. We can be fixated on what's happening in our, whether it's home situation, office situation, etc. There's a lot that we can get worried about. And so when we are extroverted, you might say that we are in yoga with the world of matter, right? We are fixated on the material world with all of the upsets that are going on with it. That's not innocent. It's not innocent to be absorbed in somebody's trial or this or that, because what happens is the things that you're watching come inside and they start working on the mind. We aren't the same when we walk away from having watched those things as we were when we sat down. We feel a little more fearful, we feel a little more angry, we feel a little more worried, right? All of those dynamics that are going on in the world become a part of our inner atmosphere. So when we turn off the whatever, now we're a little bit agitated, right? We're a little bit jumpy. And that state, that agitated, jumpy state, isn't a generous state. It's a state that makes us feel like we're missing something. We're lacking something. I need to become peaceful. I need peace of mind now. I need to be able to kind of recenter here. I feel pulled off. So it's that habit that we have kind of culturally and personally that is keeping us off balance and making us therefore have a critical response to things. And I mean, it's very tempting when you meet someone, there's so much we can complain about, right? We complain, except for the one warm day we had, we could complain about the winter. That came in November, we could complain about climate change. We can all kinds of things we can get ourselves worked up about. And we tend to build off each other. Someone says something, you say, you think that's bad. Let me tell you what happened with me. And off we go, right? Now we have actually amplified, we've filled that inner atmosphere with those vibrations of anxiety and worry. So when we talk about having, being not critical, it's not just kind of be careful that you don't say something critical. It's really about don't let yourself cultivate a critical state of mind. Don't let yourself end up with a mind that's filled with disappointment, because that's what can happen just by doing nothing, right? Just by moving along with everybody else, having the same habits that they have, watching the same things, listening to the same things, we can find that the quality of our minds slowly gets filled with these vibrations. And once that happens, we actually don't have a mind that is qualified to serve. It takes a certain quality of mind to be able to serve yourself and other people. And that's when I talk about generosity, that's service, right? I mean, that's a state of service, the ability to be generous when you're not necessarily in a circumstance where you would have to be generous, when things aren't going great. The ability to rise above and be generous in that moment is service. That's why you're on a spiritual path, so that you can have that reaction, that response to the circumstances you're in, instead of being agitated and critical. So, when you think about your day, if your intention is to cultivate a generous mind and a generous heart, a mind and a heart that are qualified to serve, then you have to look at your day and figure out, how am I going to do this? What is my intention regarding my practice? And you have to treat your meditation practice as if it's the most important thing you're doing. As important as the diet you eat, as important as your workout, as important as, in fact, I'd argue more important, because everything else goes from that. You're creating a state of mind, you're creating a state of heart, and every thought you have, every feeling you have comes out of that state of mind and state of heart. So if you have a state of mind that's worried and afraid or anxious, every thought that comes out of it's going to have that character. Generous thoughts aren't going to come out of a worried and anxious mind. Doesn't happen, right? The state of the mind and the heart determines the state of the thoughts and the feelings that come out of it. So it's not innocent to allow yourself to be critical. It's not innocent to have that, that casual approach to what you watch and listen to and who you hang out with, the company you keep. Because each of those things that's going on around you is influencing your mind and heart. So when you say, okay, yeah, I'm a meditator. I have a spiritual path. I'm interested in the spiritual life. What you're saying is, I am actively engaged in cultivating a quality of mind and a quality of heart that allows me to be of service in every setting I'm in. At home, at work, on the streets, on Zoom, wherever. Because the more refined and the more virtuous your mind and heart are, the more generous they are, the more you'll notice that every thought you think and everything you say reflects that quality of mind. I mean, the world we have right now is exactly the world we've all created together. 7.9 billion souls in the world. Everything we have collectively thought and done has generated the world we're in. And if you take it down to your own life, the life you're in, you can actually trace everything you've ever done back. If you were to follow the thread of everything you've ever said, take anything you said, follow the thread back, you would find it taking you back to the state of mind and the state of heart you were in when you said it. Right? So it follows, if you want to change the life you have, the family you have, the community you have, the world you have, then you have to cultivate the state of mind and the state of heart that's going to allow you to produce that quality of thought and feeling, which is what it means to have a generous heart and a generous mind. Because when you pursue your meditation practice, right, you're connected with yourself as a spiritual being, you're able to induce beneficial states. If you need to be peaceful, you can induce a state of peace. If you need to be patient, you can induce patience. We're in the habit of waiting around for something good to happen outside so we get a good mood. That's not going to work anymore. I mean, if it ever worked, maybe it never worked, but we can't do that. We can't say, well, when the weather's good and the news is good and my kids have a good day and all that, then I'm going to be good. I have a friend who's got a saying, you're only as happy as your least happy child. That can't be. We can't work like that anymore, right? The world's in trouble. And we've said we're going on to a spiritual path so we can serve. That means we can't be taking from the world. We can't be creating a mind from the stuff that's going on in the world. So what we're saying is, okay, we are going to move into this path in which we understand ourselves to be these beings inside, as someone has said, spiritual beings doing a physical life. And we're going to work on the state of those beings inside. I'm going to work on the state of my inner self, my true self. And then the thoughts and actions and feelings and attitude and everything that comes out of there will reflect my progress. You always know when you're doing well, when things start to move with some grace. And then when you find yourself up against the same tangles again, you find that you're in another friendship that's got that same bad nature or relationship or job or whatever, you think, uh-oh, let me pull back here and look at this. But as you make spiritual progress, then you begin to feel things get easier. Why do they get easier? Because you have you're becoming filled with this spiritual capacity. You have the capacity for tolerance. You have the capacity for acceptance, not just on some days, on most days. You can step up. People around you may not be able to, but you can, because you've been cultivating that. So when things go bad in an office setting or on the street at the bus stop or whatever, you draw on something higher. And then you're able to serve in that state and not just criticize it. You're able then to bring to it what you need. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of meditation. And what I'm talking about specifically is Raj Yoga. And the reason all of the meditation practices are good, right? It's always good to just slow down and notice the moment you're in. It's always good to watch your breathing. All of these things are good. But with Raj Yoga, what you're doing is you're stabilizing as the being inside, and then you are connecting to the source, to the source energy of life, of virtue, of goodness. That connection is what fills you up. That's what makes you generous. That's what gives you the capacity for tolerance and acceptance and love and peace of mind and kindness and empathy and compassion and all those things. You have them, but they have kind of worn out from living your life. And so when you make this connection, it stirs awake these things inside of you and brings them back out. Right? It brings to life these qualities that have been lying there latent inside. And so as a meditation practice, it gives you immense capacity. And in this time, we need immense capacity. This is no time for the faint-hearted. I mean, we have all kinds of goofy things going on. So we need the ability to be in circumstances that are completely unpredictable and feel safe. To be in situations where people are pretty hostile or uncomfortable themselves and feel loving. I mean, with love, we can all love babies and puppies. We all can watch those nice animal videos where the cat nurses the possums or the, elephant falls in love with the dog. We love those things. Why? Because everyone's so kind to each other. But can we be loving for those people that aren't very nice? Because they're the ones that need the love. The other ones get plenty, those puppies and cats and babies and all that. They get all kinds of love because they're adorable. But what about the non-adorable people who you could be related to? Or it could be your landlord or whatever. What about them? That's who needs the love. And so as you build your spiritual capacity, as you take God's love in and amplify your own love, your own peace, your own inner power, your own joy, now you move out the front door into the world and you have a lot of capacity. You have a very generous heart and a generous mind. And so whatever happens in front of you doesn't become something that trips you up. You're able to look at it and say, gosh, that one's having a bad day. Yeah, this one is struggling a little bit. Let me extend myself here. You need something. Can I get you something? Are you all right? That's service, right? That's service. And wherever each of us is, whatever job we're in, whatever neighborhood we're in, that's our service field. No one's going to necessarily give you a church, say, okay, there you go. But they don't need to, because all those people that come in front of you are the people who need you the most. And so by staying with your practice, by staying committed to this, cultivating this quality of mind and heart we're talking about, you actually become transformed. You become different. You become the best you that's possible. So then criticism isn't really one of your top choices. You're going to be much more inclined to extend yourself in some way. Give somebody a hand up. Donate peace when the room needs it most. Right? That's why you're on this path. Let me stop and just ask. I've been talking. Any questions, thoughts, comments, stories, pushback, anything? Just check in here.
Nothing in the chat, Sister Judy.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No. So,
as you were describing the process of being, how to become donor and generous-hearted and all, I felt like it's my roadmap to recovery, what I went through. And
all of us, no? All of us.
yes.
I mean, the thing is, when you're in a consumer society, I mean, we can't look at our computer screens without ads coming across. Do you want these shoes? They happen to be the ones you Googled yesterday, right? Do you want this luggage? Would you like to take this trip? Right? I mean, it's constant. We're constantly being pulled out and told we might want all these things. What we're talking about is these inner gifts, these inner capacities that is the spiritual equivalent of these material things, right? To have a stock of peace. I mean, sometimes you have to be able to quiet yourself down. Something happens and it's very disturbing. And so you have to be able to move yourself to a place where you can bring yourself to complete peace. Or you have to be able to invoke love and acceptance because you're not feeling it in the moment. You're looking at someone and you're feeling a little bit smoked. You're kind of angry with them. So you have to be able, instead of having that reaction in that moment, you have to step back a little bit and say, okay, let me pull in this unlimited love that I have, this outpouring of love that I've been filling myself with, and let me bring that to the situation. So it's what allows us to be in these times and not be distressed by them. I really think this is the lifeboat for our times. It's really important for us to be able to manage, even if it's not nice around us, and not be hoping that everything goes well, so we'll be okay.
So there's a question, Sister Judy. When
Okay.
somebody answers for you, and if you get angry and ask them to stop, is it criticism?
Well, it may not be criticism, but it may not be your best option, right? If you're in the generous-hearted place, how we respond depends on the place we're in. So if I'm feeling a little small and someone answers for me, I'm going to be kind of indignant and say, who does he think he is? Or who does she think she is to answer for me, right? If I'm feeling big, if I'm feeling generous-hearted, if I'm feeling like I have all that capacity, I may say, well, that was a very nice answer. That's not what I was thinking, but that was very creative. Now, can I share with you what I was thinking? In other words, your ability to stay light and move with people, because when you do that, you change the conversation, right? You've just elevated the conversation. You said, okay, let's play here. Let's go to the high ground. Let's see what we can do together here. And we all have this capacity. There's not any of us who can't do this, but we have kind of forgotten the way back to who we really are. We've allowed ourselves to become smaller and more fragile than we really are. We aren't fragile. We're not that brittle. We have the total capacity to be resilient and loving and peaceful and contented and empathetic. All of those things are our absolute nature. We don't have to go acquire it somewhere. We are that. That is the nature of the human being. But we've forgotten because we've been in these other habits, these different habits of engagement. And there's also, in some circles, there is this sense that if I'm cynical, I'm sophisticated. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's like, if I can be clever and have a zinger of some sort or be a little bit cynical about things, now people will think I'm clever or sophisticated or whatever. No, what people really want is your honesty and your kindness. That's what people are hungry for, not your sophistication or your cleverness. The world doesn't need any more of that. We have tons of that. The world needs the very things we're talking about. And that's what you're cultivating. That's why you are on a spiritual track, is because the spiritual track suddenly makes visible, and not only visible, but discrete, these inner aspects. By that, what I mean is we really can come to understand the dimensions of peace. And we can understand, for example, that a thought that I have in peace carries a certain vibration versus a thought I have in anger or in righteous indignation or in fear or in worry, which will carry its own vibration. So as we get more adept, more spiritually skilled, we're able to create this, invoke this inner state, this state of peace, this state of love, this state of kindness, this state of contentment, whatever it is we're working on. And as we do that, it changes the attitude we have, the vision with which we see the situation, what we say, and what we do. And because of the laws of karma, that then rebounds to us and it further elevates where we're coming from. Did you track with that? Did you follow that? In other words, as is our awareness, so is our attitude. As is our attitude, so is our vision. As is our vision, so is our action. As is our action, so is our world. And every action has a reaction. So whatever you put out there comes right back. So if you put worry and anxiety out there, what comes right back to you is worry and anxiety. But if you put peace out there, or love out there, or kindness, or empathy, compassion, etc., by the laws of karma, that has to return to you.
We have a couple of more questions, Sister Judy.
Yep.
So the first one is, what if you are watching two people you like criticizing each other? This is in a non-familial setting. Each party is trying to draw you in, and you're not even involved in their drama.
Right.
How do you avoid their engagement? Avoid their engagement and maintain your relationship with both. Can you ignore their drama even though you have to work with both on a project?
I would say you may need to ignore their drama because you have to work with them on a project. You know, I mean, I find you can always go to the high ground and always say, gosh, I love you both so much. Let me buy you both a piece of chocolate cake. Let's end this right now and let me bring something fun into the gathering here. I mean, you have to go up a notch, right? I mean, you have to remember that the state you're in is love. If you're looking at two people with love, they may be tangling, but you don't have to tangle with that. Because what you're bringing to it is the state of your mind and heart. So yeah, you don't have to get all wrapped up. And if they're looking at you, then make sure they have something loving to look at. You know, don't even give them that lower vision. That's when you're most needed. It's when people have lost their own equanimity, right? They've lost their own perspective. They're down in the dirt here, slugging it out, and they have to be reminded that honestly, in the bigger scope of things, probably doesn't matter much, right? What probably matters is that we all get along and have a nice night, whatever, you know. So no, I don't ever go there. You have to notice. A lot of this has to do with noticing, right? Because you can get pulled into something and not realize it's happened. So you have to be kind of highly alert, right? Yeah.
One more. It says it's difficult to manage criticism with family as opposed to a stranger. Why is that? And I think it's a good time to talk about it because next Thursday is Thanksgiving and everyone will be
With our
meeting family, spending time with family, because
Well, our
this topic
families
is
know us, right? They know us very well. And our families know what things are tender for us. And also, I mean, just to go to the spiritual ground for a minute, it's probably the case. I don't want to say it's definitely the case, but it's probably the case that the people in your family, they could be people with whom you have karmic history. They could be people with whom you've been before and have some unfinished business. We usually say there's two kinds of karmic connections. One is a karmic relationship. It's called karma samban. And the other is a karmic bondage, which is called karma bandhan. With a karmic relationship, there's a lot of, there's a familiarity. You kind of recognize each other. And there's usually an easiness, kind of an easy give and take. With a karmic bondage, there's a lot of push-pull between the two people. My friend Dottie Janke once said, well, you know, you try to make them happy, but they're never happy. You know, when it's a karmic bondage, no matter how much you're trying to make them happy, nope, they're never happy. One person tries to leave, the other one cries. But if they stay, they're unhappy. I mean, you can't, you know, it's vexing. So these are the people that know how to really get our goat, right? But when you move to this place I'm talking about with this generous heart, what happens is a kind of natural detachment. From that place, you really just want good for them. And even if they criticize you, you don't take the bait because you're not on the same ground anymore. You're in the space of being a donor. What you want out of it is just a beneficial state. I mean, I can tell you that there were years when my mother was getting older and we didn't have an easy relationship. And she used to text me in certain ways and I had to figure out how to manage. So I got to the point where, so she lived at 59th and 1st. Got the corner? I think there's a Dunkin' Donuts there. I think that's a street, 58th and 1st. I'd get out of Penn Station and I'd start walking and all I would think was, what is the nicest thing I can bring to this situation? How can I bring into the room something so sweet that it'll be irresistible? Sometimes I'd buy candy, sometimes I'd buy flowers, they'd open the door, I would throw my arms around her, I would bring only love into the room. And no matter what mood she was in, didn't matter. Because my intention was to be loving. My intention had nothing to do with what she did. Whatever she said, whatever she did, that was her. My aim was to be loving. And so when we make that shift, my intention is to get through Thanksgiving and let everybody know I love them and make sure I spend a few minutes with every single person in a loving way. Whatever else happens, doesn't matter. But this is my intention, right? And then as you're leaving, you're congratulating yourself because look, I did the whole thing with a generous heart. So now my heart is good, my head is good, my relationships are good, right? So it's kind of about your intention. Do you want to close with a little meditation? Or anything else you want to say before we sit a little quietly together?
Yeah, there are no more questions unless somebody opens their mic and asks. Otherwise, we can just do the meditation, Sister Judy.
I have a question. How to stop self-criticism?
Well, if the way to stop criticism of others is loving them, how would we stop criticism of the self?
Loving myself.
You're adorable. That's what you have to say. You have to say, look, I am doing the very best I can. I'm leading the very best life I can. I am good-hearted. I am kind. I'm loving. I'm trying to be the very best I can be. And if I make a little mistake, okay, sorry for that. I'm back up and I'm trying again. You know, one last thing, we all tend to have little movies that play inside our heads. They're very familiar movies. Sometimes they're criticizing someone else. Sometimes they're criticizing us. These little movies are, they kind of roll around and they're like a projection booth. When the movie starts, let's say the movie is a self-criticism movie, you have to stop it. As soon as you realize it's playing, stop the movie. Don't let it finish. Don't let it play. Usually we know it's a familiar loop, right? It goes to a certain place. When you're changing yourself inside, you stop that movie and do not let it play all the way through. And you do that each time that negative self-criticism movie plays, you stop it. And sometimes I'll even say out loud, stop. Or I used to have a dog who the command was drop it. So sometimes I'll tell myself, drop it. Don't let it play. Because like any habit, every time you play that movie, it reinforces that habit of self-criticism. But every time you stop that movie and replace it with self-love, now you're making a new movie. You're changing the habit. And if you do it consistently, every time, stop. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to say that again. I'm not going to think that again. And you replace it with the power of love and acceptance. It'll stop. The movie will disappear. It'll go away.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Want to take a few minutes together? We'll do a little meditation. So, make yourself comfortable. You should either be sitting on your feet or they should be on the floor. Your neck, your head above your spine. Just allow yourself to take a few nice breaths. And become aware of your heart. Your heart is a beautiful place. It's filled with love, filled with peace and real joy. So allow your heart to be filled with peace, love, joy, and kindness. Have the awareness, I am love. I am kindness. And allow those vibrations of love and kindness to move beyond the heart, into the body, beyond the body, into the room, out of the room, into the world. those currents of love and kindness to touch everyone you've ever met. Go to every place you've ever been. And then all the people you don't know and all the places you've never been. Move your attention to the seat of the soul, behind the eyes. With the awareness that you are a generous soul. You are a benefactor. You're a donor. And hold that elevated intention that every thought you have should be generous. Should touch those around you and lift them up. And remind yourself that you are a most worthy soul. And that you're here so that you can create oceans of love, peace, and joy in every room you enter. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Sister
much,
Judy.
Om Shanti. Thank you.
Om Shanti.
Shanti.
Shanti, thank you.
Om Shanti.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice Thanksgiving, huh?
Sure.
You too,
Happy
sister.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Same to all you.
Yes. And next Thursday, for everyone's information, there is no talk. So enjoy your time with the family. Thank you so much.
Om
Thank
Shanti.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.